Thinking Basketball Podcast. My name is Ben. Welcome back to a holiday episode. It is the holidays this week, Cody. It's the end of the year. Maybe next week at the end of the year, we'll do some sentimental year-end rounding up of the 2025 calendar year. It's always funny how the NBA season straddles the actual year, but here we are. We have other things to take care of right now, and before we jump in, we have some housekeeping to take care of before we jump in. But I would like to know how you're doing, my friend.
I'm doing well. I'm sure the listeners will see and maybe hear throughout the episode. I'm a little stuffy right now. There's been a bit of a Midwestern cold. There's flu, cold season. It's all just kind of been bouncing around, and it finally caught me this week. So I apologize if at any point my voice gives out or I just generally look gross, or at least more gross than usual. But yeah, we're here. We're gonna make it work. We're gonna talk some hoops.
Flu game incoming from Cody. Yes, if you pass out, I'll just keep going.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, I assume you'll bounce back. I think that's how it works in the Midwest. So we actually haven't had a chance. I don't think I've had a chance to ask you this. We haven't talked since our latest video came out on sort of the philosophical state of officiating, continuing to lean more toward loving offenses and letting them do whatever they want. And I feel like Frank Costanza in the episode of Seinfeld where he unburdens himself to Elaine. That's how I felt. I needed to get this off my chest. I needed to get this out of me. And now it's out in the ether. It was probably the most painful video emotionally that I've had to make, just having to watch all that nonsense and then having to see my beloved NBA devolve into whatever is happening this season with some of the officiating. But I think that I wanted to be crystal clear about that before I get your thoughts, if you have any. This was a video, as we've talked about before, about the 2026 season. There's an ebb and flow to this that we've been keeping track of since we've had this podcast. We did a couple videos on it in 2021, 2022. We talked about it in 2024. I was actually going to make a video in 2024, but then if you remember, they had that period in 2024 where they allowed more physicality. They allowed more defense. We talked about it in the playoffs. It changed some of the dynamics of the playoffs in 2024. And 2025 was similar, but also started to have some of the stuff we've seen in 2026. And the players came out in 2026 and they were just like, we are running you over. And that's how it's going to work. So I just wanted to be crystal clear on that this was very much a continued story about the evolution of these rules, focusing on 2026.
I think one thing that I want to say, and sometimes it's a good thing and a bad thing to wade into the comments. I just like to see the direction of what people are saying, trying to sift between maybe bot accounts and real accounts and what people are saying. But overall, what I have to say is that across the board, most people really appreciated what you were saying. They're like, wow, if Ben is saying this, somebody who celebrates the game so much, somebody that's been such a champion for the NBA, this is something we should probably take seriously. So I think it's great to see that you're getting that kind of recognition, not to try and blow smoke up you right now, but I like to think that especially on the show through the videos and stuff, it's all about like, we're true fans of the game. Like we want to make sure that, it's popular, it's exciting, and it's the best version of itself. And I think a key part of that is sometimes when you love something, Ben, you have to criticize it, right? And I think that gets lost sometimes. And, that sort of criticism will hopefully, I'm not going to say that video is going to lead to any kind of changes, but hopefully it leads to some kind of awareness where people can watch it and be like, oh, wow, yeah, maybe that is something that could be tweaked a little bit more, because I know we foreshadowed it quite a bit throughout this season so far, but to actually see it in sort of that video essay format was really eye-opening, even for someone like me who's been talking about it with you quite a bit throughout the season. So no, I think that was a great video, and hopefully things will shift like they always seem to do in the league.
They do, and that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that something changes because it seems to me that an enormous number of fans don't like this element of the game. And from my perspective, the strategy and the tactics are the best they've ever been. I mean, there's some really, really interesting basketball, and the skill is just incredible. And I'm not talking about this sort of played out like skill debate about where players in the old days unskilled. I'm talking about the totality of the skill on the floor at all times. Players in the old days, they said, if you're big, go to the post and you don't dribble. And now we're just seeing this like positionless, just fluid skill. The Miami Heat video on the evolution of isolation that we did last month, I thought captured this perfectly. What does the game look like? What does your strategy entail when 5 players can shoot and handle and play off the bounce and jack from 30 feet? And just that kind of skill is out there, and it's making the game incredible. And so it hurts me to hear so many fans constantly lament, and not just fans. And I think this is a key thing. There's only so much that you want to put out there when you make a contained piece like this. Like, there's other things that I have to cut. Jaylen Brown is an all-star level NBA player who has said you have to sell your soul to get to where some of these other guys are at when it comes to manipulating the officials. That's not a good play. Fans don't like that, right? That's not a good thing to hear from a star player. Broadcasters, I tried to get a couple in. There's a lot more. Broadcasters and former players like Reggie Miller, coaches going on, JJ Redick going on the press conference after the game and being like, we don't understand the rules. One night it's this, one night it's that. That's the sort of hope, is to make that a more consistent experience for the fans and just continue to get great basketball. And personally, I think great basketball comes from great defense, and I want to give defense a chance, Cody. Give defense a chance. That's my mission.
I do have to say, it feels like coaches, players, whatever else in press conferences and whatnot, I feel like I'm seeing much more anger and negativity towards some of like those kinds of ambiguities in the calls more than I ever have before. Was that David Adelman that just went screaming out of the call? I think Chris Finch went out there, got kicked out recently. Just, there's always been coaches that get kicked out for a lot of stuff. There's always people with bubbling angers and stuff like that. But it just feels like it's been a lot more like shots at what's going on. Like you talked about with Jaylen Brown. I know Wemby had some against the Thunder, like kind of boiling up that rivalry between them. But this also isn't a new thing. I feel really bad. I'm going to mispronounce his name. Is it Mike Prada? Is it
yes.
Prada? Okay. So in Mike Prada's book Spaced Out, right, he has this whole section where he talks about the fact, like he literally puts in the rules from the rule book about what is allowed for gathering and the definition of what a gather step is and how that definition changed. And even when you look at the letter of the law is like, I don't know. It kind of depends on how we decide to interpret it this year. So the rules themselves, like you said, it's not necessarily like a changing of the rules. It's how they're being interpreted, how they're being implemented, how they're being pushed through the boundaries of these players and things like that. So yeah, we'll see where things end up going, because next year never looks like the year before, or even later in the season, we never know if things shift, or the playoffs if it starts skewing back to defense. But it'll be interesting to track what happens from this point on in this season.
I was actually excited about some of the optimism of the comments of fans saying, I can't wait for the playoffs until they clean this up. And of course, that's not an ideal place either, because it's inconsistent. But it was really kind of cool to be like hearing fans acknowledge that in the last couple playoffs, they've seen some of these calls go away, and they've seen that hurt some of these players who are trying to do it. By the way, my new favorite thing in basketball after watching it for so many years is watching a player try to grift and the ref just look at him and be like, we're not going to call that. And it's just the worst looking possible play you could possibly imagine. And it's sort of that thing where, like, if refs call it that way, the players will adopt very quickly, because it's very embarrassing to run down the lane and throw the ball 30 feet up in the air and just go, and have nothing happen.
I'm immediately thinking about any kind of Chris Paul trying to pull off the like 60-foot 3-point shot with a few seconds left kind of call. Like, that's the first one that comes to mind, the flailing arms and complete anger with that. So
did I have that in the video? There was a Chris Paul play. So I ended up using clips from this summer. We watched a lot of for our historical series on the 25 best players of the 21st century. I watched a lot of Chris Paul games and some of those games from that time period, which is essentially why I just wanted to go back to that time period. I already had these clips, and I don't think it's in the video. There's a Chris Paul one where 15 years ago he tries the backcourt. He's in the backcourt dribbling, and there's a player behind him, and he tries the veer right into him and fall down. It was Rajon Rondo. Is that not in the video?
I honestly don't remember off the top of my head, but
so good.
Wait, did he get the call? I don't remember.
No, he didn't get the call, and it was just, I'm just like, basketball. Yes, thank you. What are you doing, Chris Paul? Please just go play basketball.
It is narratively poetic that he just continued doing it and it started working for him after a period of time. It's like, it didn't work. I guess I'm just gonna keep trying it until I finally pushed this. But in terms of defense and what you just talked about with the physicality, all of the playoffs blend together. I think that was last year when we had the Rockets and Warriors in the first round. That may be like the most physical series I can remember. And that got borderline dangerous in terms of how physical it got. So I don't think we need to go that far. Like there's a healthy balance. But yeah, I still think we can find a little bit of an equilibrium that's best for everybody.
It's been a week since our top 25 under 25 draft. I just want to give you the platform right now to see how you're feeling. Do you have any regrets or updates or changes at all? Just want to get that on record.
I don't know if this is maybe a first time in like draft history in terms of podcasting. Am I allowed a week later to sub out one of my picks for somebody that wasn't?
So you did want to do this?
Yeah, I think I do want to do this. Okay. I think I do.
When what was it? What were you? Who did you want to sub and why? What are you feeling?
I got a little just too excited about Derek Queen. Like I really did.
Yes, Derek Queen. Yes, the defense. Yeah,
I think it was the 22nd pick. He does so many fun things on offense, and you and I were talking a little bit more, and I was reflecting on my life, and I was just like, man, like, do I really think he's going to hold up defensively? This goes against everything that I believe in. It's terrible because I think I want to swap him out for a player that has some pretty big defensive warts, but I think I can see the role working a little bit better.
Time out. Yeah. Can I ask you a question? So
Please.
You picked Jaime Jaquez. That was your last pick, Jaime Jaquez.
Yes.
So you're saying that you don't want to move Jaime Jaquez up to 22nd. You just want to completely swap Derek Queen for someone else.
Is that possible?
That's possible,
move Jaquez?
Yeah.
Sure. Let's move Jaquez to 22.
Okay. And then who would your last pick be?
I think we're 24. I think I'm going to go with Reed Shepard, Ben.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's cool.
Yeah.
I think that's cool.
I think we'll talk a little bit about
I want to talk
today,
about him later today. Can we?
Yeah. Oh, I really want to get to it. I think that's a nice little segue to him because he might go into a little mini series that we've seen throughout the season so far, Ben.
Well, that's a perfect segue, but I just had one more bit of housekeeping. I should have done this in the opposite order, but we don't plan anything around here. We have to do our Wemby watch this week.
Oh, yes.
We have to do our Wemby watch because Victor Wembanyama is back. The Spurs are booming. We will probably talk about them more in December and when the calendar turns over to 2026. But for our Wemby watch, we are keeping track of Victor Wembanyama possibly having the most incredible historic defensive plus minus numbers of the year. The efficiency when his team is on the court, the efficiency when his team is off the court. Sorry, I said of the year. Of all time. Let me try that. It's not of the year. It's of all time. He is on pace for it. And while we are always cautious about numbers in small samples, the whole idea with Wemby is we're seeing a thing that looks like it's not noise. It looks like it's a signal. So we've got all kinds of rim protection numbers and things like that. But I'm still on just the big boy, Cody, the big boy right now. Victor Wembanyama, as of this recording, the defense is 12 points better per 100 with him on the court versus off the court. That would be number one all time in the play-by-play era in any, multi-year 2,000-minute. He's still just dredging forward with excellence.
Just in case anyone who may listen to the podcast or be on the podcast doesn't quite remember, who's also near the top there? Like who's like around 2, 3, 4, etc.
All time?
Yeah.
Okay. So I, as you know, I don't love single season stuff. I like to get at least 2,000 minutes of a sample. So you basically need at least 2 years or a year and a half or things like that. Dikembe Mutombo is the only player we have in the play-by-play era since 1996-97 to put up a double-digit change in defensive rating. Tim Duncan is like nine something and change. I think Kevin Garnett is 9 something and change. Of course, Tim Duncan and Kevin Garnett are right next to each other. You can't make this stuff up. And that's it. That's it. So on that stat, Wemby is tracking to be number one of all time. But I have another side of the stat, Cody, which I think is very interesting to just put in your pipe and smoke, and we'll come back to it. Not today, who knows next week, but this is going to be a thing that I think we're going to really need to keep our finger on the pulse on for the rest of the year. When Victor Wembanyama is on the court, the Spurs defense is 11 points better than league average right now. The Spurs defense is giving up 11 fewer points than league average. So if league average is 116 points per 100, the Spurs are back 20 years ago, giving up 105. The only starter in the league right now that is better than that is Chet Holmgren. with Oklahoma City Thunder. You may have heard of them. They have like literally the best defense of all time. Their defense is 12.5 points better when Chet is on the court. If you count Cason Wallace as a starter, Cason Wallace is minus 14. I don't know if we should count Cason Wallace as a starter because he's not really going to be a full-time starter. But man, that's what the Spurs defense is with Victor Wembanyama almost just by himself. That's my Wemby watch this week.
And if you want to go even simpler here to continue watching another streak, he is at 100. I believe he has 101 straight games with at least a block, which puts him third all time. He has to pass Mutombo, I think, at 116 straight games with a block. And then Patrick Ewing is first with 145 straight games with a block. So Wemby's streak in a couple of ways. The watch continues, Ben.
Yes, the watch continues. Okay, now can we go back? Maybe we'll just edit it. We'll just, for once, we'll move the sections around and we can segue right into this Reed Shepard thing, because the Nuggets and the Rockets played a number of games. Did they play a full playoff series this month? How many games have they played, Cody? What's going on? They played 3 games in a couple weeks, right? Do I have that right?
Yeah, I think their first game was a little bit longer ago, but this first matchup, or these last 2 matchups, were within a week, I believe. I think it was like the 15th and the 20th or something like that. And the previous one was sometime in late November. But I think this is like one of our first looks at multiple matchups of a couple of our either inner circle or like on the outside in looking inner circle. So it's, in a season where we get a lot of these matchups where it's like, oh my goodness, this team's playing Utah and Washington and blah, 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 blah again. It's like, wow, we actually have a little bit of a sample that we could talk about and see if it's anything, Ben, if this is something that we can carry into the playoffs, which again, doesn't start for 5 months from now? 4 months?
It's not 5 months. It's not 5 months, right?
7, 8 months?
4 months. But okay. So I think that's a good place to start, because one of the things we've talked about in the past is a team's performance against better rated or top teams, top 8 teams, top 10 teams, something like that. In other words, how do you perform against elite competition? This year, based on what you just said, you reminded me, Cody, that there's this weird distribution where there's like 6, 7, 8, maybe 9 teams, depending on what they're drinking in New Orleans and Dallas. Like what was the barbecue like in New Orleans and Dallas today? Sometimes those teams can show up and be competitive, but one of the things I've been tracking is, what if we remove those bottom teams from the league? Because it's making such a lopsided start to the standings. Some teams have played like 14 or 15 games against top 20 teams, and other teams have played 25 games against top 20 teams. So the way I have sliced it for us is I have removed those 9 teams from the standings. And if you do that, Oklahoma City still looks like the best team. They're still playing at a 70-win pace, even against the only, the 20 other top teams. Houston is the second best team, and Denver is the third best team. And there's a little distance between the Thunder and those 2 teams. And the Pistons are right there, and the Spurs are actually, as of recording right now, the 5th best team by win pace when we eliminate those other teams. But wow, what a treat all of a sudden to have the second and third quote-unquote best teams from this statistical perspective beating each other up over a short period of time. The 3 games were all within 1 month, and as you said, the last 2 were within 1 week. I thought they were kind of fascinating matchups and maybe worth diving in, because that entry point to Reed Shepard might be like the first thing in my notes if we go there.
Yeah, 100%. So I think what's really interesting is you have a split where the Nuggets win 2 of the 3 games. But if you look at the differential, the Rockets, because of the most recent game, I think they won by double digits or something like that, have the better differential between them. And let's talk about Reed Shepard for a second, because I think it was back during the first game, and I think you highlighted this in one of your videos. But there's a second quarter in their very first matchup when Jonas Valanciunas is out there, Reed Shepard's out there, and Reed Shepard just gets the ultra green light. And I think that's something that's changed for the Rockets throughout this season, is when he is out there, it is very clear that Udoka is like, if you have any daylight, you take the shot. Okay. If there is a big man and they are not stepping up to the level of the screen or switching or something like that, you are shooting the ball no matter what. It doesn't matter if Kevin Durant is calling for the ball next to you. It doesn't matter if you're off the dribble, if you're 5 feet beyond the line, you are pulling, right? And you can see that. I forgot how many points he ended up scoring in that quarter, but I started thinking, because I was watching the other 2 games too, and I'm like, man, it really feels like the Nuggets are struggling in some of those minutes when Shepard's out there against Valanciunas. So this blows my mind because overall Shepard in the 3 games is averaging 23 points per game on 68% true shooting.
Yes.
68%. Ben, sit down for this one. Okay. This is 35 minutes. This is the smallest sample size ever, but we're also talking about a single quote unquote series matchup. So you have to deal with small sample sizes. In the 35 minutes that Reed Shepard has been on the court when Valanciunas is on the court, he is averaging 37 points per 75 on 64% true shooting. He turns into Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and just torches them across these 3 games. So yes, I think that is a very clear starting point in terms of this matchup.
I absolutely love that stat because yes, it is small sample, but it captures what you see on film. Which is okay. I was going to hit you with the per games, but they're just pathetic compared to the stat that you pulled. Because if you look at the per games, we know Reed Shepard, mostly coming off the bench this year, he scored well, but against Golden State, he had a 31-point game, and against Washington, the Washington Wizards, he had a 21-point game. The rest of the time, he's 16 points and under. He's playing his game. He's coming along, second year Reed Shepard. Are you looking for the flashes? And then you watch the 3 Nuggets games, and he comes in the game, and not only is he just letting it fly and ripping threes and by the 3rd game, this quarter you're talking about, the 3rd quarter where he had 17 or 19 points or something like that. I mean, he's talking trash to the fans in the front row after these threes. And you said it. The first member video we did on their first matchup and some of the dynamics of that first matchup, Houston has spacing issues, and also they don't play a true point guard. And I'm not saying Reed Shepard's out there diming people up out of, high pick and roll all the time, but he came in the game and it changed something offensively for them. And now we've seen that in 3 games in this series. And so my first question is about Reed Shepard. If we're looking at this like baseball type, in season mini series, these guys have already kind of played. Is Reed Shepard an X factor in this matchup specifically for the Houston Rockets? You can't necessarily say against the Spurs or the Thunder or an Eastern Conference opponent, but in this matchup, is this a real thing, what we're seeing? Like they get to the playoffs and Reed, would you be shocked if he averaged 20 a game?
No, I wouldn't be shocked at all. And I mean, I think if we get to the playoffs, we would see some more adjustments. We would see some more creative defensive stuff, maybe some pre-switching type of things so we can get people like Valanciunas or, I got to say though, when Jokic is on the court, he plays at the level so much better than Valanciunas does. He's just a lot more comfortable in those sorts of positions. But I would imagine we would see adjustments that would do something. But I just look at the composition of the 2 teams. These are just 2 massive teams. These are 2 teams that play physically, right? Like Jamal Murray being the point guard for the Nuggets is just somebody that's bigger than a traditional point guard. He's not one of these jitterbug types of guys that's going to be skittering all over the place. There's not like those sort of point of attack, we're going to sick you on the quickest type of guy player that the Nuggets have. They're just more well-equipped to guard the bigger types of players, the Kawhi Leonard types of players, or even somebody like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who you can bother a little bit more with size as opposed to somebody who's smaller and quicker. But yeah, I think it's just such an interesting juxtaposition with what Shepard brings to the table that's just not on really either of the rosters. So at this point, I clearly would not be surprised if he was an X factor in the series.
I think that segues to the next question, which is about the actual matchups on the court and the Rockets playing these jumbo lineups, which is really cool. We'll probably have something on this. I mean, they're just playing some of the biggest lineups we've ever seen in the entire history of the NBA. You turn it on and you're like, wait a second. Is Kevin Durant playing the 2 or the 3? Is Amen Thompson the point? I guess Amen Thompson's the little guy on the court at like 6'6", 6'7", and then Jabari Smith. And then it's like Durant, Jabari Smith, Steven Adams, Alperen Şengün. Oh my God, how much does it cost to feed these guys? This is absolutely incredible. And so then what happens is the Nuggets, who are not a small team, we need to talk about this because Aaron Gordon has missed these games with injury. They're going Jokic, Valanciunas, Twin Towers, and then they don't have a ton. Peyton Watson will be out there, but they don't have a ton of beef left. And it's not just vertical size. It's not just height. it's also the strength and the muscle to battle with these guys both on the glass and in the post, because Houston will throw the ball into the post and bang you around. And have you had thoughts on this? I mean, there's possessions where they're like Jamal Murray's getting cross-matched onto Alperen Şengün, not because of some weird breakdown or something, but because there's no one left to guard. Like, it's either him or Pickett. I was going to say pick one, but you know what I'm trying to say, Cody. It's not good.
I think along with Aaron Gordon, like you said, Christian Braun has missed all 3 of the matchups against the Rockets. And this is another guy that thrives with sort of that physicality that you can throw all over the place. And to your point, the Rockets, we talked about with Jabari Smith Jr., who is just climbing up as one of my favorite, steadiest players in the league right now. Like if I had to put money on a guy that is going to be right now on championship contenders until he's like 39, Jabari Smith Jr. would be like at the top of my list. Like he just has the skill set, and he just knows how to fit into a kind of system that's like, this is an ageless game that he has. And with his size and shooting ability and strength and whatever else, he's incredible. So if you have like a smaller player out there, it's not like you're going to be like, oh, I could just guard Jabari in the corner, right? I guess I'm going first name with him. It would be like, nope, he's going to take you in the post and he's going to hit you with this little turnaround. And he's like 6'10". So you're not going to be able to contest him at all. And it's like, okay, then I guess I'll go to Kevin Durant. Oh, nope, that's one of the best shot makers that we've ever seen. So, there's no real way to hide somebody, because everyone that's on the Rockets is able to like add some kind of offensive value without necessarily just standing in the corner. Like Amen Thompson, for instance, he is currently averaging 3.5 offensive rebounds per 100 possessions, where if you were to stack up all of the non-bigs in the NBA, there are 126 non-bigs that have played at least 500 minutes. Amen Thompson is 4th in offensive rebounds per 100 possessions, 3.6. And Josh Okogie is 8th with 3.3 offensive rebounds per 100 possessions. So it doesn't matter who's out there. You're going to have to deal with people crashing the glass. You have to deal with guys being able to hit tough shots in the post. You have to deal with a couple of guys that can hit these 3-point shots, or you have to be one of the 3 people trying to box out Steven Adams.
Well, you covered a lot of ground there.
Yeah,
that was exciting.
We got really excited there. We need to back up.
Okay, let me back up a second, because in the last game that was a Houston win, the Rockets, Josh Okogie made 3 of 5 threes. Reed Shepard made 6 of 9 threes. Kevin Durant made 5 of 6 threes. Jabari Smith made 5 of 11 threes. If you defend like Houston, and I thought Houston's defense caused probably the most issues to the Nuggets offense of the 3 games, it had a little bit of the feeling of like, we've seen you a bunch, like we've seen you a bunch. We have a feel for your timing and your actions and what you like to do. The game's getting really physical. So that might be a little bit more of a constant, that defensive bar that the Rockets can keep Denver in, the terrestrial atmosphere without letting them get into outer space. But I mean, if a team like that shoots 60% from 3, and all the role players that shoot threes, because that's the thing about the Rockets, their other players don't shoot. And that's what's so fascinating. Şengün is out there. Steven Adams is out there. Amen Thompson is out there. They don't shoot threes. They're not 3-point shooters. So anytime they can get that from the actual players that shoot threes, it's incredible. By the way, how old is Jabari Smith? He's 22 years old. Yeah, so 17 years, we're going to be watching him in the NBA Finals. I'm very excited about this.
Right. You agree with that, though. Like, you can see him
He's
age 36 coming off the bench as an 8th man in some kind of championship contender.
He's such a perfect skill set for that 4th or 5th player in a lineup to fill out the lineup. Versatile defender, height, doesn't take anything off the table. He can shoot. He can rebound a little bit. Yeah, I totally agree with it.
I got to say, I'm thinking back also, because it's interesting to try and think of it as what changes across all of the games. And there was sort of a pet action that the Nuggets were going with in game 1, where Murray was coming off a couple of stagger screens. And, with some of the screening rules, it's maybe tough for guys like Amen Thompson to legally get through some of them. But Murray was getting at least 2 or 3 clean 3-point looks that he was able to knock down. And I felt like watching this most recent game, the Rockets were really buttoned up on the perimeter shooters, really buttoned up. And I think the outcome of seeing that is there's a lot of possessions where you just see Jokic being like, I guess I have to take this one-on-one right now, driving into the basket, having to go into his post up and things like that. And you're like, you know what? I haven't seen Jokic make a tremendous pass in a really long time. And I think that's because the Rockets are so good on their system, and guys like Thompson and Okogie and whomever else being able to chase all these guys all over the place and really staying glued to their men. So yeah, Jokic has these spectacular plays where it's like, wow, Adams is really having to fight for his life to have stop Jokic from driving all the time. But I think that's, a plus for all of the other defenders the Rockets are rolling out there. So it felt like across the series, we've seen the Rockets starting to, like you said, kind of start figuring out what it is that the Nuggets like to do offensively.
Well, the last game 2, that was about a week ago as of recording, they had a battle between Şengün and Jokic, right? The Spider-Man meme pointing at each other. They just went back and forth in the post and isolation and trying to back the other player down and, hooks and spins. And I guess based on what you just said, is it fair to say that Şengün has had better passes in the last 2 games than Nikola Jokic? I mean, he's had a bunch to Amen Thompson. He's had a couple where he's that play that Şengün loves where they clear out a side, he's isolating, and he's getting ready to put you in the grinder. He's getting ready to back you down. Oh no, double team comes. So now he's like, oh, I'm 7 feet tall. The double team's coming. I got the ball over my head. And he like looks like he's shooting it, but he lobs it up to the other side of the rim to Amen Thompson. It's the same play Jokic hit Aaron Gordon on for the game winner against the Clippers last year. He's had like 3 of those in their matchups in the last week, I think. So, I mean, is that crazy to say that based on what you're talking about with these defensive concepts that we've seen more sort of good Alperen Şengün passes in the last 2 games?
That's really interesting. I would love to go back and
down. Yes.
Yeah. And check all that out, because I think one thing that stands out here is I think about like Jamal Murray being on Amen Thompson. And like I was just talking about, it's like, oh, we can just hide on this non-shooter over here. But the thing about Thompson that like throws off Murray and opens him up is Thompson at every moment of the game is like, all right, when can I just run towards the basket? Right. And he's so good at timing those out. And he's so athletic that even though he's a guard, small forward, shooting guard, wing type of player, that he's just underneath the basket and he can just jump up there and he's throwing down all kinds of lobs or grabbing offensive rebounds or things like that. So if Murray just for a second is ball watching, Thompson's like, great, I'm going in for a lob. Or if there's a shot up and Murray's like, relax for a second, or whoever else is guarding him, Thompson's like, great, I'm going to go crash for this offensive rebound. So with that in mind, yeah, I think the Rockets across the board have been so buttoned up defensively that the opportunities just aren't there for Jokic that have been there for Şengün.
Yeah, it's interesting. How do you feel about the Houston offense? Maybe not just in this matchup in general, because we've talked about it before. So much of what they're getting seems to be offensive rebounding. I think it's fair to argue that in the playoffs, that's still going to kind of be there. But there's an emphasis on the kind of, I think, in the sense that you're going to dare Josh Okogie to shoot a lot of threes.
Yes.
So if he goes out of the lineup, then who's it going to be? In other words, the offensive rebounding thing also is a trade-off where at a certain point you run out of shooters unless you just play Kevin Durant and Reed Shepard 35 or 40 minutes and kind of ride that horse. And then you're like, hey, Amen and Alperen are going to be hanging out in the paint, because that dynamic you're describing with Amen Thompson is kind of floating along the baseline constantly. It's not just even cutting to the basket. It's like they stick him in the dunker spot while Şengün is posting up on the block, while possibly a third player is crashing in, and they're going to hit him as a cutter. But if they don't hit him as a cutter, he's very difficult to deal with because of his athleticism on the offensive glass. And I don't know. I feel like this is a thing that while it could still be present and valuable in the playoffs, doesn't maybe necessarily give you a high ceiling for an offense in the playoffs. But that's just my impressions based on watching this series.
And I think something that has stood out is, I wrote down multiple times in my notes across these games that's just Kevin Durant's tough shot making is just such a steadying force for the Rockets team, right? Like at the end of the day, we have this same structure of a team we saw last year. We're like, man, this team is just begging for shot making, and now they have Kevin Durant standing here in their laps. But the Nuggets have really been mixing up the coverages with Kevin Durant, really been mixing up like, oh, he's going to come off a pick and roll here, come off this screen. How is it that we're going to defend him? But almost always they throw multiple bodies at him because we've talked about this ad nauseam. It's almost not even worth bringing up, but Kevin Durant, we talked about, has some passing issues when he is faced with a lot of strong coverage, right? We go back a few years to that first round Celtics matchup, and they kind of laid the blueprint for how to be really physical with him to bother him. And I think the Nuggets have been doing a great job. And there's multiple instances where we see wayward passes or dribbles off somebody's foot because it's in too tight of a space or something like that. And that sort of thing would be just dialed up even more in the playoffs. And if you can start taking Durant a little bit more out of the equation, you can see his age a little bit more in the playoffs. I think some of the consistency you see with the Rockets offense really tapers off. And then you're relying a lot more on the offensive rebounding and the weird system that Thompson brings and things like that, where I'm like, man, maybe the Rockets offense actually has a bit more to drop off if we get to a playoff scenario.
On the flip side, I feel like they went to more Durant, Şengün two-man actions. And what's interesting is that those two-man actions, to your point about Kevin Durant's playmaking, didn't necessarily create this like beautiful 4-on-3 basketball, like what you would see sometimes with Murray and Jokic, like roll pass, pop three, skip pass to the corner. But it did feel like, especially in this last game, it created this centering ballast kind of calming force where it's like, you're going to switch, Kevin Durant's going to get to the elbow, pull up over a shorter player. You're going to switch, we're going to get Şengün on a mismatch, we're going to play. That's what they want. They want to get Alperen Şengün deep in the post and get a mismatch and start getting to that funky offense that they have, which I want to say it's from the 1980s, but it's also not. It's like the 1980s and the 2020s had a baby. It's just a very, very interesting offense. And, you know, we can't not talk about, before we leave this series, we can't not talk about Aaron Gordon not being out there and the Nuggets side of things and what that would mean.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Because I think, you know, you look at some of the numbers where across this series, across these 3 games, when Jokic is on the court, the Rockets have a plus 7.9 net rating, right? They've been outright winning and like by a pretty comfortable margin these minutes when Jokic is out there. And again, Aaron Gordon is usually going to be out there with Jokic. Christian Brown's going to be out there with Jokic. So we really do have to factor those in. It's not like we saw an actual 1-to-1 matchup of what the playoffs are going to look like. But yeah, Aaron Gordon's versatility, you know, if they're really locking up these other guys that maybe are a little bit more of a struggle to create for themselves, Aaron Gordon can provide some of that versatility. He provides strength down in the post, you know, the grab and go types of stuff. So he's obviously an enormous X factor that we just haven't been able to see across the series. I think it was actually, wasn't it game one, talking about like it's an actual playoff series, but in their first matchup, isn't that when Aaron Gordon went down with his injury that's kept him out this long?
Yes, he played like 3 minutes of that game or something like that. Yeah, so we essentially have not been able to see this matchup with Aaron Gordon, and of course Christian Brown is another starter who's a pretty big body. Christian Brown, you know, big guard or wing kind of player as well.
So with all of this said, what can we take away from it? Like what can we like talk about here and be like, here's some definitive thing that you can take back to your water cooler and talk about in terms of this series?
I guess I was going to ask you if you came away from these 3 games, you know, the Rockets have the point differential edge. Yep. The Nuggets won 2 out of 3. The 2 games they won were extremely close. The Nuggets have not been at full health. The Nuggets have also done great in the Jokic minutes. It's not like he's played light minutes either, although last game he ended up playing 29 minutes. Was he in foul trouble? He sat for some period. I can't remember why he sat. Do you remember in that last game?
No, yeah. I don't.
I cannot be expected to remember that far back. That was like 3 whole days ago. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is, do you feel like one of these teams has a matchup edge over the other if they do indeed get locked in the 2-3? And it's no guarantee they're going to get locked in the 2-3 matchup, which is obviously would be like a bloodbath, but you know, the Spurs exist, so who knows?
I think if you had asked me how a series would go between them prior to the season, during the preseason, the first couple of weeks, I would have been pretty like the Nuggets would have this in the bag. Like they're going to be the team to beat. But now that I've seen this, I'm like, wow, the Rockets are kind of built in a way that it negates a little bit the size and physicality that the Nuggets bring, right? Because you think back to the Thunder and Nugget series, it's almost like a rock, paper, scissors sort of thing, right? Where the Thunder are flying all over the court and they have all these spindly guards and whatever else, and they're strong, but they're not quite as big. Whereas the Rockets kind of have like the size and physicality to match up with the Nuggets and might be able to bring another alternative punch that could be a bit of a weakness to them. So I guess in the thinking basketball spirit, I'm probably not going to be like, oh, I would favor this team over the other right now, but I'm a lot more interested in the series after this. I think it would be a lot more close, and if the series went 7, I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Is there anyone the Rockets can play, I guess, outside of OKC, where if the series went 7, you would be? It just feels like playing Houston is just like a rock fight right now. I guess that's maybe my biggest takeaway.
Is that, do you mean that you think that they're maybe tougher than you initially thought?
No, it's just sort of reaffirming that against these high-level teams, unless you have some massive edge, that it's just what we saw last year. Like it's just a grind. They're just going to beat you up and try to wear you down. And that was maybe my biggest impression from the final game of the 3 games that they played. That game started to get really grimy, and it felt like that Houston just loved that. They were like, yeah, baby. Yeah, it's like, yeah, let's get some technicals. Let's get David Adelman's losing it. Let's get a couple fights. It just, let's get that 72-64. That's what they want.
No, I mean, again, go back and rewatch the Warriors and Rockets last year. They like the griminess. They like the physicality. They like the football sort of basketball thing. But in terms of the whole conversation where it's like, hey, without Fred VanVleet, this team has no chance. Well, if this immersion of Reed Shepard is real, if this is something that's going to continue throughout the season, it might not matter because they might be able to play their like strange point guardless, no organizing 3-point shooting point guard lineup, but then have somebody like Shepard come off the bench, and it's exactly the sort of changeup that they need. So that's maybe the takeaway is if Shepard can keep this up, especially against higher level teams like the Nuggets, they're a lot more deadly than I think a lot of preseason pundits were talking about after the VanVleet injury.
So full circle back to the idea of looking at how teams play against the 20 or 21 other best teams only, and getting rid of these sort of bottom feeder tomato can type teams on the schedule. If you look, Cody, right now at the standings, there are 7 teams with a +6 margin of victory.
Oh my God.
7 teams have a +6 margin of victory. And yes, it's still early in the year, but we're like, what? We're almost 30 games into the season. That's a significant sample to see this. And we could double check it later if it holds up, but I think it would be an historical outlier. In the past, only a couple teams in a season get to a +6 or a +7 based on a typical distribution of teams, and those teams are championship level teams. If you outscore your opponent by 7.5 points a game, you're a championship level team. You get up to 8.5 points a game, you start talking about all-time level teams typically. So that's why it was really important to me to be like, all right, for now, I need to make sense of this in my head, because it's weird to look at, like, let's see, the number 7 team in margin of victory is the Boston Celtics. They are 18-11 or whatever their record is with a +6 margin of victory. That's like better than some of the Kobe Bryant Laker championship teams. That's just weird to try to contextualize that. Like, if you didn't realize, Cody, what is the Oklahoma City Thunder's margin of victory right now? Do you know it without looking it up?
Man, it's got to be like, it's in the double digits. I'll just say that. +12?
It's +16.1. This is what I'm saying. So full circle, that is sort of essentially why I'm trying to take this perspective and sort out, in reality, these top 6 or 7 teams. I mean, Minnesota's 8th in margin of victory. I guess you can throw them in there, but I have a spoiler alert for you. You're never going to figure out the Minnesota Timberwolves. Okay. No. They're a team that one night can beat the best team in the league, and then the next night will lose to like a completely shorthanded team that has absolutely nothing, right?
If the Timberwolves went into a playoff series right now against the Giannis-less Bucks, there's like a 50-50 chance they would lose the series. There just is.
Can you please share the almost greatest factoid in NBA history? Can you please share that?
Okay, what is it that I texted you? Just like
I have
to vamp for a second while I
okay, so
here.
Basically,
Cody, yep.
You got it. Yeah.
So last year, at one point, right? I don't think I have the order correct here, but in the 24-25 season, the Minnesota Timberwolves beat the Oklahoma City Thunder, right? And then the next game, the Oklahoma City Thunder loses 103-100 to the Giannis-less Bucks. I was at that game, and it actually informed a lot of my.
Yes, you brought this up last year on the podcast, I believe. So they beat Oklahoma City. They lose to the Giannis-less Bucks 103-100. That is last season. This season, what happened?
So I think I may have had the order messed up there. But again, this season, the Timberwolves beat the Oklahoma City Thunder, who've lost like 3 games this year. Their next game, they almost lose to the Giannis-less Bucks, but I think the final score is 103-101. So again, we have a final score. The lead is 103. But just the fact that they almost followed it up with another Giannis-less loss, that Timberwolves team is weird. They love playing to their competition. I'm not going to let you escape. I need to ask you a question before I have like a serious analysis thing to say.
Okay, I just want to say that is one of the most important stats in NBA history that you just shared with us. Yes.
In terms of the Timberwolves, it is the trick or treat Wolves. That's why we called them that, because they'll go in and take the Thunder in an interesting series and then lose against, a JV team that plays in high school.
I don't understand why the Minnesota fans, maybe they're just bots that are like, they're like, you guys are so blah, blah, blah about the Wolves. I'm like, do you not understand that when they beat the Thunder, that's great. And when they lose to the Bucks, that's a thing that happened. That's actually happening. I'm just saying, if I were a Wolves fan, I'd be like, this is definitely a trick or treat team. What's your serious question? Yeah.
No, my non-serious question. You called the bottom 9 teams the tomato can teams?
Yes.
What is this? What is this metaphor?
That's a term. That's a term for like soft opponents. Yeah, milk toast.
What's wrong with tomato cans?
There's nothing wrong with tomato cans. They're just, I don't know. That's just the term.
I've literally never heard that before.
Well, that's okay. It's
so
the tomato can of it all.
It's like an inside joke to an inside joke.
I broke Cody. Sorry,
that's too much. Ryder in the comments right now for our live feed brings up the defensive concerns about Shepard. I think Reed Shepard is a really fascinating test case for evaluating defense, because this is a guy, he flies around the court. Like, I don't remember which of these games. Again, I have 3 Nuggets Houston games in my head right now. Like, Bruce Brown gets around him on a screen. Shepard like chases behind him and blocks the shot from behind, like in a very Eric Bledsoe, Drew Holiday sort of sense, right? He's all over the court. He's flying around in passing lanes. He's getting steals. He's getting into dribble handoffs. It's like, man, this guy's really active. But on the other hand, like, Jamal Murray just blows by him, or the Nuggets just target him and he's just kind of standing there, or he's too small to do anything in the paint. So at the end of the day, when you look at all of it together in terms of what Reed Shepard brings defensively, you can attack him. And the fact that he's on the court makes your defense more vulnerable and susceptible to a lot of different kinds of actions. So even though he can like hold up the back end with a few nice defensive plays and effort and things like that, he is still a negative defensively, because, you still have to cover up for his inefficiencies on that end. So it's a test case where it's like, he's maybe maxing out as good as he can be defensively because of his size and lateral quickness and things like that.
He does gamble. He does go rogue and try to hit home runs, and sometimes they hit. I'm not sure in his case if it's the worst idea, because his defensive playmaking is a real thing. Yes. He can be a little disruptive. I mean, for a player his size, this goes back to what he did at Kentucky, just a unique style of athleticism that's really kind of tantalizing and interesting to see how he develops in the next couple of years. I'm adding Reed Shepard to one of my most interesting players list. 2026, I'm going to keep a most interesting players in the NBA list, and Reed Shepard is going to be on it. But 3% steal rate, 2% block rate for a little guard, that's a lot of defensive playmaking. You know, that's getting some stocks. So to your point, if you're going to be at a disadvantage in a matchup, maybe it's worth it sometimes to try to gamble for a steal. And then they're good enough with all the big bodies behind to rotate and recover and kind of change the matchups and switch behind the play. So yeah, he is definitely an interesting test case in that lineup, he gives something back defensively from the Houston perspective. But of course, in this, if he's going to be so good offensively, then yes, you have more to say.
This is going to maybe make some people angry, but I'm just going to say it.
Is it going to make me angry?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, if it's not going to make me angry, then go ahead and say it.
I was trying to think of defensive comps in terms of like being able to gamble and taking advantage of that, but probably pretty close to a negative on defense.
And you're thinking of a small guard.
I am thinking of a small guard.
And he played 20 years ago.
Oh my God. Are you going to do it?
And he played in Philadelphia.
Oh my God.
You're thinking of Allen Iverson.
I am thinking of Allen Iverson. We should stop podcasting. But yeah, defensively, he has a little bit of the Allen Iverson juice where you're, leaky defensively because Iverson was like 170 pounds soaking wet, probably not 6 foot tall, can be attacked in that way, but Iverson's motor was off the chart, so he's got him beat a little bit there, but it's the same sort of vigor and disruption and going for the home run that we saw in Philadelphia.
To support this podcast, patreon.com/thinkingbasketball. That's the best way to do it. And we have stats. We've got team stats. We've got player stats that update throughout the year. And then, of course, we have our extra videos. And you can get them on YouTube, but there's a tier on Patreon where you can get everything. You get all our videos. And the reason why I'm pointing that out right now in this more deliberate manner than normal is because, Cody, I have decided, executive decision, that when this podcast ends, I'm going to go make an emergency member video on Ugo Gonzalez of the Boston Celtics. Did you see the game yesterday?
I didn't get a chance.
Did you see this?
I didn't get a chance to yet. What happened? Can you foreshadow what this video is going to be about?
Yes. Okay. So first of all, Joe Mazzulla needs so many props just for everything that's going on. We're going to have to do some more deeper dive stuff on this Celtics offense. I know we had an episode about them, and it cracks me up. Someone was like, "The Celtics are boring." I'm like, "Have you seen the Celtics in 2026? I think we have the wrong year crossing wires." But that whole thing aside, Joe Mazzulla yesterday, just like 2 minutes into the second half, goes, "I am benching the entire starting lineup. You guys are pathetic. You make me sick." I think there were some swear words that he used. He sat everybody down. And then as the 5 players were coming over, he went, "Nope, not you, Ugo. You stay out on the court. You 19-year-old wondrous deer. You just go out there and do what you need to do." And Ugo played the entire second half, basically. He stayed out there the entire time. And he was amazing. As usual, his box score is like 3 points, 5 rebounds, and 1 steal. And he might be pushing new boundary for just mocking the box score. He's 19 years old. He does all these things that aren't captured in the box score. He's a ridiculous defender. But I just loved yesterday that in a game where Joe Mazzulla benched the entire starting lineup to start the second half, which takes some chutzpah. I love it. And it worked, by the way. They came back and won the game. They turned the game all the way around. The one guy he chose to stay out there was 19-year-old rookie Ugo Gonzalez, who has no particular awesome basketball skills on offense to speak to, no incredible highlight reels and crossovers and dunks. That's the guy he keeps out there. And Cody, do you want to know why that's the guy he keeps out there?
Why?
Because the Celtics are like plus 20 per 100 this year when Ugo Gonzalez plays in the game. It's like Oklahoma City Thunder players and some Knicks. I don't know who else is up there. And Ugo Gonzalez. They're like 20 points better per 100 when this 19-year-old is in the game.
I texted you another stat about this because you were very, very excited about this performance. That I need to go back and watch it for myself because I'm a huge Ugo guy. I was about to drop the H there. But what I find so fascinating with him, this is probably going to connect to a Robert Horry All-Stars at some point. But again, if you look at a bunch of the non-bigs in the NBA right now and look at how many shots they take per 100 possessions, how many field goal attempts per 100 possessions, Ugo Gonzalez is 179th out of 191 players that have played at least 300 minutes this season. So basically, of these guys that get minutes on the perimeter, he does not shoot very much. He's like very much in the bottom quartile of guys that shoot. So it's a really fascinating test case to be like, wow, this team rocks when this guy is out here and he can turn around the energy of a game and things like that. But he's not taking like any amount of shots. He's not doing it with scoring or anything like that. So it's going to be really fascinating to see what you dig up in that video, because the fact that he's potentially one of these little thing kings as a teenager, I mean, that's more or less unprecedented. I cannot think of rookies, much less teenagers, that have that sort of the game figured out at this level. So
this is the thing. He's like backwards. He's like a 33-year-old veteran. He's like, no, I don't really need to shoot, but I'll do all these other things. And that's what happened yesterday. You're just watching this game, collecting note after note after note. And I've after our conversation today, that's what I'm going to do when we finish this podcast. I have realized that something must be done about this. I thought you were going to say earlier you're an Ugo fan. I thought that's where you're going with that. But like, this is a player who at 19 years old, the defense is really good / incredible at times, and then on offense, I don't know what he does. He's great at finding open space and passing the ball really fast, and offensive rebounding and cutting into little gaps and getting on the baseline and quickly setting screens. He seems to have the trust of the coaching staff. It's all backwards. It's all completely backwards. So yeah. You have any other things you need to get into in this outro before we wrap up?
We have a lot of topics that we have to hit in some post podcast things. I don't know if we have time at this point. You know,
do you just keep a running list of things? You're like, whenever Ben is done talking about basketball, I'm gonna get to this at the end of the show. I'm
always like, I wonder what Ben actually would talk about. It's like, how many minutes can I get Ben to talk about the Odyssey trailer? Does Ben want to talk about core strength and one battle after another? Like, what sorts of things can we get into?
One battle after another, I could go for a long time on. The Odyssey trailer, I think that I don't know what's going on with costumes in Hollywood. That's my thought there.
My take is I don't care, and I am there right now. I'm already in the theater, and whatever happens is going to happen. For context, people, I've taught a mythology elective at high school for the last 6 years. I've taught the Odyssey for years now to 9th graders, and I've lamented. I've actually told multiple mythology students, this is no joke, I said the goal of this class is to inspire some of you to go and make a good Odyssey movie. So now that this is coming out, this is like my Super Bowl, man. This is like my NBA Finals.
Yeah, Cody, I was going to ask you, are you in on any mythology? Like, if next week they're like the Iliad, like, are you just like going to the theater right away, or does it have to be some director and set of actors that you trust?
I'll probably see it, but the fact of the matter is there's a long and sad history of really bad mythology-based movies. Like, if you try and just like, oh, I'm going to watch the best Greek mythology movies in history, you're not going to run into a bunch of them. They're all pretty bad. They're all pretty poor, and they just don't understand what makes the Greek myths really interesting. I think you almost have to go back to like Jason and the Argonauts in like the 50s to find like a truly great mythologically based movie, or even like the Disney Hercules one. But even Greece was like, don't you dare premiere this here because it's so offensive to our mythological history. So you know.
I take it you're not a big Troy fan.
I love Troy.
Oh, okay.
I'm actually a really big fan of Troy.
Yeah. And then to give you an idea of how hardcore, for the 12 people still listening who have read these books from 3,000 years ago, to give you an idea of how hardcore Cody is into this, I also don't read a lot of, what are they called? Books. I read a lot of other stuff, but not books. And I've read the Odyssey and I read it in school. And as a result of that, Cody starts bringing this up, and I'm like, what about the Armand Assante? Like, this is a very deep cut. I'm like, what about the Armand Assante 2-part television movie that they made way back when? And he starts giving me like director's notes on the different scenes that they laid out. I'm like, all right, okay, Cody is very excited about this.
Yeah, I'm deep in the mythology bag, so this is very exciting for me. Even if it's not like the greatest movie ever, I'm not going to be blown away by a story. Like, there's nothing about the Odyssey that's gonna shock me or confuse me. I just want to see how it's all pieced together, what elements are put in. I guess this is now officially our post segment today.
Sorry. Yeah. I don't know how we got here. I wanted to rant about one battle after another, but that day will never come. So we'll be done with that. How do I end this podcast, Cody? I wish everyone a very happy holidays and Christmas, and I don't know what else is being celebrated this week, all kinds of stuff. Whatever you celebrate, whatever you're doing, next week we'll be back to wrap up the year, and who knows what Cody will ask me after the credits at the end of the show. But appreciate everyone listening as always, especially the people in the live audience here on YouTube, and we hope you're having a great day.